Wow, stories.
So my boyfriend, 24 years old, and I, 26 years old, have been dating since December 2022. I feel I need to give a lot of backstory to give a good idea of how our relationship got to the way it is. We were really happy the first year being together. He loved to see me all the time and made great efforts. I was living in a very overpriced one-bedroom flat with my flatmate, and we would visit each other often. I was paying over £1,000 to sleep in the living room. This is London, of course. I was able to manage on full-time, but last year the rent was raised by another £200, which I said I couldn't afford, and he had offered me to live with him 1 year into the relationship. We live in the garden summer house of his parents' backyard, where we have electrics, so pay his parents little rent, which has been great. I had moved in with my ex less than 1 year in, and it didn't go great, but he was on the autism spectrum and very dependent on me, whereas my current boyfriend is very successful in his job and self-sufficient. We didn't argue much and enjoyed each other's company, even when not doing much. We don't have very similar film or music tastes, which is one thing that would upset me, because it was my favorite activity to share these things. Anyway, last December, his childhood friend had hung himself with no note, and presumably, no one being aware of his depression. My boyfriend since then doesn't see his friends, and on top of that has been highly overworked at his job. So I'd barely see him even when living with him, as he's been doing constant overtime. Both our mental health's been awful since it happened, but I did my best to be there for him as he grieved. We didn't go out much, and when we did, I would feel anxious in social settings and not enjoy myself, which he'd get upset about. Last month, he tried to hand in his work notice, but instead of quitting, they decided to send him to another site in Edinburgh to do training. I hadn't seen him properly in almost a month, which is very hard for me. I've gotten into a lot of depressed and suicidal thoughts since my teenage years. When he asked what I needed, I said, I just need constant reassurance and love to know that we're okay. My ex had cheated on me and fallen for my friend, but didn't want to break up with me. So I was strung along for a while. My ex before was depressed and suicidal, but wouldn't let me break up with him, fooling me into believing he'd unalive himself if I left. I was young and more impressionable at the time. Anyway, the last week being alone, with his parents constantly bickering in the garden, I actually felt okay. I was looking after myself and staying sober. However, he finally gets back at 11 p.m. last night. I assume he'd want to come straight to me to see me, but instead he goes to his parents upstairs to catch up and says he won't be long. I started to get anxious. We hadn't been messaging much. He hasn't really said I love you or I miss you, unless I was saying it first. I had a breakdown again where I was hitting myself and crying so hard to the point of giving myself a stomach ache and headache, which I still feel now 15 hours later. I frantically messaged him saying, this isn't fair, I'm getting anxious, because I just want time with him without his parents around. He said WTF and I have the right to talk to them. And I said, sorry, then said, I was worried he doesn't love me anymore or care about me because it felt that way. This was over text, by the way. He said he does love me, but there's something we needed to talk about. I asked him not to leave it too long because I'd overthink. I had to wait 2 more hours until 5 a.m. until he finally came down. I was holding my stomach in pain and he came to hug me and said he wasn't sure how to tell me this. Cut to the chase, he feels we moved in together too fast and that I should move out. He said he knows I need someone to look after me and reassure me, but he feels he can't do that right now and feels he'll be able to put in effort again. He said he doesn't want to break up and loves me. I don't really understand it, because if you want to put in effort, then just do it. Why do I have to leave? So I messaged a lot of people this morning, different friends, my coworkers, my parents. A lot of them are telling me to break up with him, that he doesn't love me, that I don't deserve this. I'm going to stay at my sister's. I don't really know what to do. I can't stay at hers forever. I have a lot of my own furniture that I can't take, so I guess I'll still come here when I want. I don't really know what answer I'm looking for. Because he said this isn't a break because he still wants to see me. If I could, I'd probably just leave, but London is so hard to afford now. We're going to spend the day tomorrow and talk more about this, I guess. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You are not in good working order to be in a relationship right now. From what you have said, his avoidant attachment style is really incompatible with yours. I think you urgently need therapy and to start building up your mental health and investing in yourself, because he cannot hold you together and it is harming you to be psychologically dependent upon this man. For as long as you are self-harming, you are not healthy to be in a relationship that is not intensely manipulative. You are now doing a smaller version of what your ex was doing to you. Comment 2. Both our mental healths have been awful since it happened, but I did my best to be there for him as he grieved. Not trying to be rude, but in what way have you been there for him? In your post, you list a lot of ways he has had to assure and comfort you, but you have not listed one specific way you have been there for him. My guess is he still loves you, as he said, but I imagine he is exhausted and still hurting from his friend's passing. He needs time and space to heal. I recommend you focus on healing too. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So, after my boyfriend told me I should move out, things got even more complicated. The next day, we sat down to talk. I was still at his parents' place, feeling awkward and out of place. He explained that he felt overwhelmed with everything going on, his friend's death, the job stress, and our relationship. He said he needed space to sort things out. I was hurt, but tried to understand. I packed a few things and went to my sister's place. Living at my sister's was tough. Her flat is tiny, and I felt like I was intruding. She was supportive, but kept hinting that I needed to find my own place soon. I spent hours scrolling through rental listings, but everything was either too expensive or too far from work. I felt stuck. Meanwhile, my boyfriend and I kept texting. He was still distant, and I felt like I was losing him. One night, I decided to surprise him by showing up at his place with his favorite takeout. I thought it would be a nice gesture, but it backfired. When I got there, he was in the garden, talking to his parents. I waited for a bit, but he didn't come to see me. I felt ignored and left without saying anything. The next day, he texted me, asking why I didn't come in. I told him I felt like he didn't want to see me. He apologized and said he was just caught up in the conversation. I felt a bit better, but still uneasy. Then, something unexpected happened. My boyfriend's boss called him and offered him a promotion, but it required moving to Edinburgh permanently. He was torn. On one hand, it was a great opportunity, but on the other, it meant more distance between us. He asked for my opinion, and I didn't know what to say. I wanted to support him, but I also didn't want to lose him. We decided to meet and talk about it. When we met, he seemed more relaxed. He said he was considering taking the job, but wanted to make sure we were okay first. I felt a mix of emotions, proud of him, but scared for us. We talked for hours, and he assured me that he still loved me and wanted to make it work. I decided to stay at my sister's for a bit longer while we figured things out. But then, I made a mistake that changed everything. I was feeling lonely and reached out to an old friend, someone I used to have feelings for. We met for coffee, and it was nice to catch up, but I didn't tell my boyfriend about it. I didn't think it was a big deal, but I was wrong. A few days later, my boyfriend found out. He saw a photo of us on social media posted by a mutual friend. He was furious and felt betrayed. I tried to explain that it was just coffee, but he didn't believe me. He accused me of cheating, and we had a huge fight. He said he needed time to think and stopped responding to my messages. I was devastated. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I had ruined everything. I spent the next few days in a daze, barely eating or sleeping. My sister tried to comfort me, but I felt so alone. Then my boyfriend called. He said he had thought about everything and decided to take the job in Edinburgh. He said he needed a fresh start and couldn't handle the stress of our relationship right now. He suggested we take a break and see how things go. I was heartbroken, but agreed. I didn't want to hold him back. The fallout was tough. I had to move all my stuff out of his parents' place. They were kind, but clearly uncomfortable with the situation. I found a small, affordable room to rent, but it was far from ideal. I felt isolated and missed him terribly. During this time, I reflected on my past relationships and realized a pattern. I'd always been drawn to people who needed saving or who made me feel needed. My ex-boyfriend, who was on the autism spectrum, my other ex, who was depressed and suicidal, and now my current boyfriend, who was dealing with so much grief and stress. I realized I had a tendency to lose myself in these relationships, trying to fix everything and everyone. I also thought about my childhood. My parents had a rocky marriage, and I often felt like I had to be the problem solver. I think that's where my need to fix things comes from. I always felt responsible for other people's happiness, and it was exhausting. As I settled into my new place, I decided to focus on myself for a while. I started therapy to work through my issues and began reconnecting with old hobbies. I took up painting again, something I hadn't done in years. It was therapeutic and helped me process my emotions. I also reconnected with some old friends, people I had lost touch with over the years. It was nice to have a support system outside of my relationship. They reminded me of who I was before all the chaos and helped me find my footing again. My boyfriend and I still kept in touch, but it was different. The distance and the break had changed things. We were both trying to figure out our own lives, and it was clear that we needed time apart. It was painful, but I knew it was necessary. As I navigated this new chapter, I realized that I needed to learn to be okay on my own. I had always relied on my relationships for validation and security, but it was time to find that within myself. It was a slow process, but I was determined to grow and heal.